Hi everyone, Γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making a delicious holiday dessert, pumpkin and phyllo spirals. They're sweet and flaky and crisp and delicious and syrupy, and I could keep going and going, but we have to get started making this. This recipe is perfect for your holiday table, or if you want to serve this at a brunch, I'll leave it up to you, but let's get started. Okay, so for the syrup, I have 1 cup of granulated sugar in my saucepan. I'm going to add to it a cup of water and bring everything to a boil. I'm also going to add 1 cinnamon stick before everything boils. It should just all go in the pan together. Whisk it up as soon as it starts to warm up so that way the sugar can melt. As soon as the sugar melts, take it off of the heat and stir in a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract and set it aside to cool completely. Okay, so now it's time to make the filling, and it couldn't be easier. All you need is a big bowl. And I'm gonna do a double batch of the filling so that way I can use up all of the phyllo, because a single batch makes 7 of the spirals. So I'm gonna make as many as I can. These are so delicious and they do freeze well. So that's why I'm using 2 cans of pumpkin. This is plain pumpkin puree, which is just basically cooked pumpkin. If you want to cook your own, that's fine. If you want to use butternut squash instead, you could cook some butternut squash and use that. I just love the color of the pumpkin, and it's just so nice this time of year to use it. That's why I'm using it. Make sure you're using plain pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie mix. That's totally different. So since I'm making a double batch, I'm going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar, 4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and I always go heaping teaspoons. When it comes to cinnamon and vanilla, extra is better. A 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves is for a single batch, but I'm doing a 1/2 teaspoon because this is a double batch, right? And a 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger. And I'm just going to whisk this all up until it's smooth. And then I'm going to add some raisins to it. You can leave the raisins out. You could add cranberries if you wanted to. I love the golden raisins in this, so I'm just going to add 2 cups of golden raisins, but not with the whisk. I'm just going to fold them in using a spatula so they don't get stuck in the whisk. And then the filling is ready. Now, if you want to make this a little more rich, you can add some cream cheese to it. So 1 8-ounce package of really soft room temperature cream cheese will give it more of like a pumpkin pie kind of feel to it, like a pumpkin cheesecake. You can do that if you want. I'm leaving it plain because it almost gives it like a pumpkin halva, if you've had halva, that texture to it. It's just so good. It's like a pumpkin custard. But I'll leave it up to you. I know some people don't like raisins, but we love them around here. So for 1 batch, it's 1 cup, but again, 2 batches is 2 cups. And that's it. The filling is really that simple, could not be easier. This smells amazing. We're just gonna assemble the spirals now. All right, so now to assemble them, you're gonna need a pound of phyllo. This is number 4 phyllo that you make baklava with. And make sure it's thawed out overnight in the refrigerator. And then you could leave it out on the counter at room temperature for at least an hour before you work with it. So that way it's easy to work with and the sheets stick together less than they would if you didn't thaw it out properly. Okay, we're gonna take 2 sheets at a time. I've melted 2 sticks of unsalted butter and I have that ready to go. I also have 2 trays here that are lined with parchment paper. Okay, so I'm gonna take 1 sheet at a time and I'm just gonna drizzle the butter over most of the sheet. Take the other one and put it on top. If you ever end up with 2 sheets that are stuck together, don't worry about it. Just use them. Don't try to separate them. Otherwise, they're going to end up tearing and you're going to end up throwing them out. Drizzle butter on top of this sheet as well. Focus on the top part of it because that's what's going to end up sealing the whole thing together. You don't have to brush the sheets. This is good enough. And then we're going to take this delicious filling. I never measure, but it's about 1/3 cup. And just spread it on the bottom third. You can add a little more as you go. And you don't need to go all the way out to the edges, otherwise it'll come out. And then you cover it and you roll it up like that. And then just turn the ends in and spiral it up. Do it a little bit loose, but not too loose. If you do it too tight, it'll start to break on you until you have a spiral like that. And then you're gonna put it on your baking tray and just keep going until you run out of phyllo or the filling, whichever one happens first. Hopefully there'll be enough and finish together. I know some people like to butter the sheets. I don't have the patience for that. And it still comes out perfect. This filling tastes so good. I haven't tried it, but if you maybe put 2 tablespoons of semolina flour in this, it'll just be really good. It'll make it a little bit heartier. I might try that the next time I make these. If you give it a try, let me know how they turn out. You see it does start to tear a little bit in the corners. Don't worry about it. Okay, brush them really generously with butter, with the melted butter all around, especially where they connect. So I ended up with 11 spirals. I'm gonna freeze one tray and I'll bake one tray. And there's just a little bit of this pumpkin filling left over. I'm just gonna transfer it into a little container and store it in the refrigerator. This is delicious in yogurt. You could even put it in oatmeal. So good. Okay, so make sure that your oven is preheated to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. These are gonna bake on the center rack for about 45 to 50 minutes or until they're nice and golden and crisp. Baking phyllo at a lower temperature makes it more crisp, so that's why I do that. Then as soon as they come out of the oven, once they're nice and beautiful and golden, like we said, we're gonna pour some of that cooled syrup over the top. If you baked all of them, you might use all the syrup, but be careful, don't over syrup them because the filling is already sweet because we put plenty of sugar in there and you don't want them to become soggy. You can definitely store leftover syrup in a little jar and keep it refrigerated. You could put it in drinks and all sorts of different things. If you want to, you can definitely serve the syrup on the side in case anybody wants to add some syrup to their spirals. That's a great idea. Now, if you're not baking all of the spirals on the same day, they freeze beautifully. So just go ahead and assemble them and brush them with butter and put them on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper and set them in the freezer for about an hour or two or even overnight until they're chilled and they're solid. And then you can transfer them into freezer-safe containers or bags and they will keep fresh in the freezer for up to 2 months. And you can bake them frozen. You don't have to thaw them out. You would just bake them at the same temperature, 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour or until they're beautifully golden all around. And then pour the syrup on top just like we did. I've also put some walnuts on a baking pan and I just roasted them for about 7 minutes or until they were nice and fragrant. At the same temperature, 325 is fine. And then once they're cooled down, you can chop them up and garnish your phyllo and pumpkin spirals with them. It's gonna add some crunch and it's just so delicious. The pumpkin and the raisins and the walnuts go so well together. Just transfer them to your serving platter and sprinkle the nuts on top and they're ready to serve with some nice Greek coffee. Time for the taste test. They're so good. The filling is so nice and it has all those pumpkin spice flavors in them that we know and love. The pumpkin is almost creamy. It is creamy actually. And there's no dairy in it. But like I said, you can put some cream cheese in there if you want some richness. The phyllo is nice and flaky and crisp. It's so good. So the recipe for these pumpkin and phyllo spirals are in my new ebook. It's a brand new holiday ebook called 25 Days of Desserts. It's a compilation of 25 delicious recipes that are perfect for the holidays or any special time of the year. You can head on over to the website, dimitrasdishes.com, to purchase the book and download it and use it over and over again during this season and throughout the year. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.